At 7 a.m., Sarah Carter strolled down Main Street's grass-flanked sidewalk with her red and white Australian cattle dog, Whiskey, at her side. He was off leash as usual, and none of her neighbors seemed to care, as they greeted them both with head scratches for him and good mornings and nice days to Sarah. It had been 6 years since she and Whiskey had moved to Cottageville from Seattle, where she had gone to university. But in some ways, it felt like Sarah had been here her whole life. Cottageville was where her grandmother had lived for 30 years, and Sarah and her parents had been frequent visitors, so Sarah had been adopted by the locals as one of their own. The bald-headed grocer, George, age unknown but Sarah thought was definitely over 65, was unlocking the front doors of Produce and More and called out, "Good morning, Sarah. The missus will bring chutney by at 11 for a nail clipping." "Thanks for the heads up, George," Sarah said. Nail clippings didn't need appointments, but grooming did at Carter's Canine Coiffure. Sarah appreciated the forewarning of Chutney's arrival. He was a rescued Chihuahua who acted like a Tasmanian devil with bared teeth and frenzy when it came to anyone touching his feet or when he felt threatened. And being at the groomer's instantly triggered all of his fears. The last time he had come in, his razor-sharp claw scraped a bloody line up Emily's arm. Sarah couldn't afford to place her assistant in that precarious situation again. Yes, scratches and bites could be a hazard of unwanted washing and clipping, but the deep dig-in almost sent Emily to the ER. So, instead of continuing their usual morning stroll, Sarah and Whiskey detoured into the hardware store, which opened early, to buy forearm-length tough leather work gloves as a precaution, and a way to get the chutney nail-cutting job done. Whiskey wiggled his nose at the sense of metal, wood, and paint, and tried to sneak down the aisle containing birdseed. Sarah spied him and commanded, "Follow." He stopped, acknowledged her with eye contact, and then dropped his bushy red and white tail and flattened his ears like he was sad to disappoint her before slinking in her wake. Sarah pulled 3 pairs of gloves over her pale, freckled arms before deciding which ones were best for the job, and then walked to the cash register. She greeted Daniel. The offspring included on the store's outside signage, Buck and Son Hardware. The S had been removed years ago after his parents discovered Daniel would be their only child. "Gorgeous weather," Daniel said as he ran Sarah's credit card and gave a beef jerky treat to Whiskey. Whiskey inhaled it, and then crept behind the counter and pawed Daniel, asking for another. "Ignore him," Sarah said, shaking her head. "He's insatiable and lacking in manners." Daniel laughed. "His big, sad brown eyes certainly make it seem like he's saying, 'Please, please, please.'" "Something like that. But still, he doesn't need another." Sarah smiled and appreciated the warmth in Daniel's eyes, which were almost the same color as Whiskey's. Sarah knew that Whiskey would be given another treat when they stopped to say hi to her best friend Ginger, who owned Java and Juice, and that he'd get a biscuit from Bill, an elderly man who read his morning paper and drank his coffee, rain or shine, on his big wooden front porch next to a gallon-sized glass jar of dog biscuits. Every dog in town loved to stroll through the town and stop at Bill's. And if Bill had a tail, Sarah mused, he'd wag it, as he seemed just as excited to see the dogs as they were to see him, and his treat jar. He was a widower, and Sarah thought all of the visitors made him feel less lonely. But before they could go to the end of the block and to Bill's, Sarah pushed open the painted red door on Java and Juice, which tinkled the brass bell attached to the top of the frame. Ginger's back was to the door as she was frothing foam for the top of someone's latte. Her blonde curly hair was pulled into an unruly high ponytail that peeked from under a colorful abstract print scarf. Ginger kept her hair covered so it didn't interfere with the fabulous food and the refreshing drinks she made and served. A few of the regulars stood in line catching up on the latest town gossip. Sarah heard a snide comment about the elementary school principal, and 2 women at the far table had mentioned the name of Sarah's next-door neighbor, Janice Jenkins, before the conversation paused. The regulars greeted Whiskey and Sarah, and then went back to their conversations. Sarah didn't catch what was said about Mrs. Jenkins, as the women at the table dropped their voices after Sarah's arrival.